In the beginning, everything seemed like a fairy tale. The person was welcomed with open arms, enveloped in a feeling of love and care that seemed to know no bounds. They were catered to in every way, leading to a profound sense of belonging and acceptance. The promises of a future filled with love and mutual respect were abundant, and in this whirlwind of affection and attention, they eventually agreed to be married, believing they had found their forever home. However, as time passed, the situation took a dark turn. They were belittled, told they were nothing without their partner. They were made to feel as though survival without them was impossible. Constant demands for loyalty were made, with an expectation to turn their back on family and friends if so instructed. Their time, money, labor, and essentially their entire life had to be sacrificed to their partner. Yet, no matter how much was given, it was never enough. They were kept on a never-ending treadmill of fear, always trying to meet the next demand, to prove their worth and loyalty. Their partner, the self-appointed leader of the relationship under the guise of divine directive, claimed that all these instructions and demands were coming from God, giving an unchallengeable authority to their demands. What started as a dream rapidly devolved into a nightmare, a far cry from the promises made at the beginning. If you knew of someone, or if you yourself were in the relationship that I just described, what would you call that? That's an abusive relationship. It's extremely unhealthy, and you need to get out. But if you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses, that is the relationship that you're in with the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. And in this video, I'm going to walk through this scenario and explain exactly how that is so. In the beginning, everything seemed like a fairy tale. The person was welcomed with open arms, enveloped in a feeling of love and care that seemed to know no bounds. When you're studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, at first, the witnesses will pay lots of attention to you. They will love bomb you. They're kind and friendly and chatty. They invite you to do things. It seems great at first. They're taught to do that, to make you feel welcome. And that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as it continued to be true. But sadly, it does not for a lot of people. They were catered to in every way, leading to a profound sense of belonging and acceptance. Before you're baptized, you are catered to. Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to encourage you to get you to want to be baptized, to be one of them. And so, of course, they're going to treat you well. Of course, they're going to put the best foot forward. Of course, you're going to be welcome at the Kingdom Hall. You're going to be invited to their gatherings. This is going to happen because they want you to join. And this does result in a very strong familial feel to the bond and the acceptance that they give you, especially for people who don't have a strong family bond or family unit outside of the religion. This can seem really great. Think about it like a gang member who comes from a really terrible family life and joins a gang to find acceptance in a group that cares for him, right? This is not dissimilar, although granted, it's not violent like a gang is. It's not dissimilar though. The psychology is the same. People who come from poor family backgrounds, people who come from abusive relationships, very often end up in the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. It has been my experience that most of the people in the religion either were abused or are abusers that are repeating the cycle that was put upon them. And that's why they accept the change whenever the cycle of abuse begins. So let's keep going here. The promises of a future filled with love and mutual respect were abundant. That's very true. All the promises that the Watchtower gives, the paradise, right? The end of war, seeing your dead loved ones again in the resurrection. These things all sound beautiful, although, of course, billions of non-believers have to die for that to happen. But it just sounds so wonderful and beautiful and great. And again, this is where Watchtower takes advantage of people who are in very bad situations. Like if a family member died and they're in mourning, you can be more susceptible to that message that they give you about the resurrection. If you're poor, you can be more susceptible to the message they give you about how you'll have an abundance in paradise. These tactics work to get people into the religion. So you have this future, you're taught, filled with love, mutual respect, and abundance. And in the whirlwind of your affection and attention and their affection and attention towards you, you agree to be married to this organization, believing you found your forever home. You get baptized. That is the equivalent of the marriage in this analogy. But once you're baptized, things change. See, now you're in. Now the threat looms, because once you're baptized, you can be disfellowshipped, you can be kicked out, you can be shunned. And keep in mind that by the time you make the decision to get baptized, at least when I was in, by that time, people have already begun to separate from their worldly attachments, from their friends, from the people they used to hang out with, and sometimes even to separate quite a bit from their family through the disagreement on religion, because a lot of families do not like when they see their family members studying with Jehovah's Witnesses if they know anything about it. And that causes conflict, that causes division between them. And I believe that's exactly what Watchtower wants. It wants a wall between the person who is close to becoming baptized and their family, and definitely a wall between them and their former friends. And by the time they're baptized, those things are typically already in place. So now they've got you, because if you end up shunned, guess what? You've lost all of your outside social network. And who do you have remaining? Only Jehovah's Witnesses, because they're taught not to have friends outside of the organization. They are belittled, told they're nothing without their partner. Jehovah's Witnesses are told that without the guidance of the governing body and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society and all their publications, you can never find the truth on your own. Only the governing body is the faithful and discreet slave. Only the governing body is the channel through which Christ spreads his knowledge to the earth. Only the governing body has access to the new light from Jehovah that teaches you what the truth is, what the future holds, what the Bible means. You are nothing without them. This is how a cult works. They dangle that carrot, and once you got it, they beat you with the stick. Then come the constant demands for loyalty, with an expectation to turn your back on family and friends when you are instructed to do so. So let's say that you studied, but your family was already Jehovah's Witnesses. If one of them were to leave because they decided they no longer believed in the religion, you are demanded to shun them. You must have nothing to do with them. Otherwise, you will be looked at as spiritually weak and you will be soft shunned. Now, technically, the Elder's Handbook, the Shepherd the Flock of God book, says you cannot be disfellowshipped for associating with a disfellowshipped family member, but you cannot hold any position in the congregation. They will come try to talk you into not communicating with your family member. And if you persist in doing so, I promise you word is going to spread that you're spiritually weak and that you should be avoided as bad association because you're violating the rules of the governing body that you are supposed to follow. But let's say you don't have any family in the organization, but you do make some friends after getting baptized and joining. And one of those friends, for whatever reason, looks up some information about Watchtower's policy, let's say the two-witness rule, and the damage it causes, and decides that they can no longer support a religion that engages in these kinds of harmful practices, and they choose to leave formally by disassociating. They don't just fade, they're not pretending to still believe, they speak out and they're gone. Now, you are required by the governing body, by the Watchtower rules, to shun that individual. And if you don't shun them, you will also be disfellowshipped and shunned yourself. It is an extremely abusive relationship that you're in once you're baptized. Their time, money, labor, and essentially their entire life has to be sacrificed. Yet no matter how much was given, it was never enough. That is the life of one of Jehovah's Witnesses. First of all, you're not paid for all the work that you do, but you have all these meeting attendance. You've got field service. If you're a brother, they want you to take on responsibility in the congregation. They want you to help build kingdom halls that they will flip and make a profit from. They want you to do all this work in addition to you having a job and taking care of yourself and trying to get enough rest in between all of that. And if you have a family, you have the added responsibility of your family, your spouse, your children, all of these things. It's a never-ending hamster wheel, and it's never enough, because the Watchtower tells you that you are a good-for-nothing slave. What you have done is what you ought to have done. You should always reach out to do more, 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 more. You're never at a level where you've done enough. No one will ever tell you that you've done enough in service to Jehovah or the Watchtower. I challenge you to go ask anyone in the congregation, especially anyone in the leadership roles like an elder, do you think I've done enough for Jehovah? And it doesn't matter how much you've done or how much you've sacrificed or how faithful your life has been. The answer to that question is always no. There's never enough. The God you serve, which they claim is Jehovah, but is actually the governing body, is never satisfied. They always want more. They were kept on a never-ending treadmill of fear, always trying to meet the next demand to prove their worth and loyalty. The Watchtower will tell you, through the writings of the governing body and their publications, etc., that you have to continually prove your loyalty to God by doing more and more. And it brings about a fear. It's a treadmill of fear because you're afraid that if you didn't do enough, well, God's not going to be happy with you. And when the end comes, you're toast. So it is a treadmill of fear. You're constantly trying to reach out to meet their demands. And when you do meet the next demand, they always ask something else of you. It's never enough. Your partner, the self-appointed leader of this relationship, under the guise of divine directive, claimed that all these instructions and demands were coming from God, giving an unchallengeable authority to their demands. That's the governing body. They claim that they are the faithful and discreet slave. But how do they know that? Well, because they said so. They're self-appointed faithful and discreet slave. There was no divine proclamation like when Jesus was baptized that onlookers heard to know that they're the faithful and discreet slave. Like, no, we say we are, and therefore we are. But they didn't used to be. It used to be all of the anointed were the faithful and discreet slave. But then the governing body's like, nah, it's not all of them. It's just us. We are your Lord and masters. We are your rulers. And yet they also claim, while saying that what instruction they're giving you is coming from God, in the sense that they reference the Bible for it, they also admit they're not inspired and they're not infallible. Well, then it's not from God if it's not inspired and you're not infallible. You're just guessing, or maybe it's an educated guess. Maybe you're doing your best with your Bible education to come to a conclusion, but you're just another man. You're not special. You're not the faithful and discreet slave. You don't have any authority over anyone. You're not a prophet. You admit that. You're not inspired. You admit that. You're not infallible. You admit that. And if those things are true, then other people don't have to listen to you. They're under no obligation to do so, but if they don't, they're apostates and they get kicked out and shunned. This is an abusive relationship that you get in when you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. What started as a dream rapidly devolved into a nightmare, a far cry from the promises made at the beginning. Now, let me talk about my own experience. I was raised in the religion. From birth, I was in the religion. And at first, all the honeymoon period that I described in that analogy was true. It was great. And for the first few years, it was still great because I didn't know anyone who got disfellowship. I was making strides. I loved to give talks. I was a natural public speaker, and so they had me do that a lot. I didn't like the field ministry, never did, but I thought God wanted me to do it, so I did it. And I eventually pioneered. I got married. I had a family. And as the years went on, the burden got heavier and heavier and heavier, because as I got older, they expected more from me. And I wanted to do more because I thought it's what God wanted. Again, the hamster wheel of fear. Even though I remember as a child, I had a recurring nightmare that It was Armageddon. Fireballs were falling. I'm running and I'm sweating and I'm running. And I see angels swooping down and picking people up and taking them away to safety, but they're not getting me. And I'm scared to death because I think they're not going to save me and I'm going to die and Jehovah's going to kill me. But at the very, very end of the dream, angel swoops down, picks me up, and then I wake up and the bed is soaked with my sweat of my fear. Think about the kind of religion that makes a child have a repeated nightmare like that. And I am not alone. I have talked with many people. People have left comments saying they had recurring nightmares when they were children about these same kinds of things. That's the kind of relationship you're in. So that fear is always there, pushing me to do more. And I got more and more miserable as time went by, no matter what I accomplished in life anywhere else. And I didn't understand where it was coming from. I didn't realize until much later that it was the religion and the demands of the governing body in the watchtower that was causing me such misery. And when I finally realized that, and I left the religion, the relief of all that weight coming off of my shoulders was incredible. I felt like I was getting away with something by not doing all the stuff that you do on the hamster wheel of hell that Watchtower puts you on. And I remember when I was a teenager, my closest friend at the time in the Kingdom Hall, his mom was having severe stress problems. And I don't even know why she was talking to me about this. I think I was just in the room. I don't think she was directly telling me, but it's a long time ago. But I will never forget what she said. She said she went to see a therapist, which at the time, that was pretty unheard of. Keep in mind, this is an elder's wife, and that's pretty unheard of in the religion at the time. This is in the mid-90s, early to mid-90s. She went to see a therapist, and the therapist asked her, well, what do you do for fun? And she said, well, I go to the meetings, I go out in service, and she starts listing off all the responsibilities she has to Jehovah in the congregation. And the therapist said, no. Those are the things you think you're supposed to do. What do you do for fun? And my friend's mom had no answer to that question because she didn't do anything for fun. Jehovah's Witnesses don't take time for hobbies, right? They don't put time into what they're really good at. Let's say you're an amazing singer. Well, you're not, no. You sacrifice that for Jehovah. Let's say you're amazing physically, like at a sport. You just have a natural talent for athletics. No. You put that to the side for Jehovah. You sacrifice everything you love to do. Let's say you're a musician and you can play the guitar and just naturally amazing at it. No. Not that you can't do that a little bit, but you should play kingdom songs and you should focus only on Jehovah. Don't write your own stuff. Don't try to get on the radio. Don't try to publish your own music. Don't try to become famous. No. You've got some people like Michael Jackson, Serena Williams, those kinds of people that at one time at least were considered Jehovah's Witnesses. Prince was considered a witness for a while. But the things that those famous people do are so contrary to the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. And you'll notice that the Watchtower never openly claimed that those people were one of them. They never did. They let people think it, but they never said it. I remember in a congregation I was in Plano, Texas, the brothers there, the young brothers, started up like a football group because they like to play football. They're young dudes. Of course, they like to play football. And different congregations started having their own football teams, and they had started like this little regional thing where they were having, playing football and having competitions, and it was fun and they enjoyed it. But let me tell you, when the circuit overseer got wind of that, he put the kibosh on that. Like, he stopped that right away. You can't have organized fun as Jehovah's Witnesses outside of the control of the Watchtower, the governing body, the elders, because it is an abusive relationship. An abuser cannot have you be enjoying yourself without being under their control, because if that happens, guess what? You start to realize, oh, I don't need them as much as I thought. Like, I actually feel much better when I'm not with them, when I'm not under their pressures and demands all the time. So you have to stay on the hamster wheel from hell, because the second you get off of it, you're like, oh, that's such a relief. And then you look back at it, you're like, I ain't getting back on that thing. And that's what happens with a lot of people, especially younger people, which is why 2 out of 3 people born and raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, they leave the religion when they're adults. It's an abusive relationship. And anyone who puts a little critical thinking onto what they're being asked to do will see that. And very often that ends the relationship as well it should. This analogy of an abusive relationship actually came from a post on Reddit that I'll link to below. It absolutely bears all the hallmarks of that same kind of relationship. It starts wonderfully, but eventually gets worse and worse and worse until you're under their complete control. Well, that is what I think, but I would love to know what you think, to hear your experiences in the comments below. Please like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you'd like to support the channel, please either click the join button below the video if you see it. There's also a link to how to join and become a member in the video description as well. So I appreciate that in advance. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.